When it comes to EVE Online, every player wants to know the most effective tactic available. You want to know the meta. The meta controls everything. It determines what will and will not happen. Knowing the meta will alter your views, make you question your reality. It might even make you laugh. And now, you're part of it. You're watching The Meta Show.
Greetings, conversationalists from across New Eden. I am Brisc Rubal, the executive producer of The Meta Show. This is a special podcast edition of The Meta Show. Today is October the 7th, 2024, and with no live Meta Show yesterday and a boatload of news, I didn't want to go an entire week without some Meta Show content for our fans. So we're going to do this podcast edition. Now, I know we've not done a podcast edition of the show in quite a few months. I know you dislike it when we do the show with no visuals, so I am changing up how we do the podcast edition, and you're going to get to see my face while we do it. So this isn't exactly a podcast, but it gives the folks on YouTube something to look at besides a ship. Not everybody is going to prefer that, but hey, this is what you get. So in addition, we're going to go a little more informal than usual today. Now, I'm still going to have a drink because it's like 11:30 on Sunday night when we're recording this, but I'm not wearing a suit, and you're not going to notice that if you're listening on Spotify or our Apple Podcasts, so I don't think you're going to miss that much. Not going to lie. Now, what you are going to hear is the best news and commentary from the Imperium News Network, as you hear every week on the Meta Show. This weekend, we heard from Asher Elias, the Alliance Executive of the Goonswarm Federation, in a State of the Goonian speech on Saturday, October the 5th. In that speech, Asher announced what we have come to call the Great Migration of 2024, which is likely going to end up being the Great Migration of 2024 and 2025, because I don't think we're getting this stuff done in the next month or two or three. With more than 3,500 people listening on INN and thousands more on the Goons' internal comms, Asher announced that Goonswarm is moving from its home in Delve to the southeast, shifting permanent stagings from 1DQ-1A to UALX in Tenerife. Now, this is going to be the largest move-op in the history of EVE Online. Goonswarm has more than 47,000 characters and 10,000 characters plus of Imperium allies, and they all call Delve, Period Basis, and Quirius home. Now, those 47,000 characters represent thousands of real-life people, and those folks are going to be moving tens, if not hundreds of trillions of ISK worth of assets from Delve and Period Basis and Quirius into Tenerife, Impasse, Immensia, and Ketch. Now, I don't have to use a lot of superlatives here. This is by far the biggest news of this year in EVE Online. And as Asher noted in the speech, the Goons have lived in Delve for nearly 9 years since being evicted from Declan during the Casino War back in 2016. Tens of thousands of players, real-life people, have lived in Delve during this time period. And despite the fact that Goons lost most of the space, most of it was leveled during Vietnam in 2020 and 2021, Goonswarm has prided itself on replacing all of those lost assets in the region in what I would only consider to be a New Eden version of, say, Build Back Better, if you'll pardon the political reference. So after holding off all the rest of the nullsec in Vietnam, Goons are now doing what Pappy was unable to do, and that's getting Goonswarm out of Delve. Despite Asher speaking for 15 minutes on the subject, I've seen a lot of questions about the move, and the one question that has been repeated over and over again, whether it's on Reddit or in private discords or DMs across EVE, that one question has been asked more than any other, and that question is, why? Now, Asher went through all of this, but for those who didn't listen to the speech or would rather have me explain it to them, I'm sure there are a few. We're going to go into a number of reasons that he outlined in the speech, and then I want to talk a little bit about a few that he didn't, which is namely the follow-up question of why, which is, well, why now? All right, so according to Asher, the number one reason why the decision was made to leave Delve was pretty straightforward, and it's simple. Goons have outgrown Delve, and I think that's fair. Look at the numbers, all right? Delve has 97 systems in it. Of those 97, Goonswarm controls 79. And included in the 97 are a handful of systems owned by non-Goon Imperium members like TNT and Lawn, and then there's a dozen systems controlled by the Blood Raiders, which is the NPC pirate faction in Delve. In addition to Delve, Goons control 24 systems in period basis. The rest are controlled by our allies, and then the same is true in Quirius, where Goons control 12 systems. That is a total of 115 systems in the Southwest for an alliance of 47,000 characters. I did the math, and if you guys know me, math is hard, okay? But I did the math, and that's a ratio of 408 characters per system. 408! Now, we've talked about this on the Meta Show before, but I want to make it clear. That's 408 characters per system in Delve for Goons. Just Goons. Now compare this to Horde. Pandemic Horde is the largest alliance in the game. They have nearly 50,000 characters in the alliance. Horde controls 315 systems across 9 regions, and that doesn't include the 191 additional systems that their affiliated ratting alliance, their rental group, controls in those regions as well. And Horde's ratio of characters to system is something like 158. 158 Hordelings for each system in the systems that they control, compared to 408 for Goons. So moving east to Tenerifis and the surrounding regions give Goons far more space, with 40 systems in Ketch, 51 in Impasse, 42 in Tenerifis, and 84 in Amencia. Goons will go from 115 systems to 217, which is almost double. And in Amencia alone, Goons will control more systems than they do in Delve. That'll get the ratio of characters to systems down to 216. That's better. It's way better than in Delve, although it's not nearly the elbow room that Horde has. And nobody's got more elbow room than NC Dot, who control 193 systems for their whopping 2,600 members, of whom 3 log in, for a ratio of 13 characters per system. I'm not making this up. That's the number. And that's nuts. Okay? But back to Goons. As Asher said, in the history of Goons, Goons have lived in Delve for close to 9 years. That's a long time. A long time in EVE Online. No major group has held the same amount of solve for that long, period. Now, granted, Goons lost most of Delve and the rest of Imperium space, except the Otaki constellation around 1DQ during Vietnam. But most of the Goons had consolidated all their stuff into 1DQ before the end of the war, and the system has not fallen since Goons have controlled it. 1DQ has stayed strong. Now, 9 years is a long time to live anywhere, even in real life. That kind of length breeds stagnation. You know, everything's been figured out. You know where everything is. You know where the bathrooms are. The rats have been figured out. Everybody knows the moons, you know, the routes in and out, and the geography, as well as you know your own neighborhood in real life. There's no challenge. You want to know how to do something in Delve? Well, look it up on the forums if you can figure that out. There's probably a forum post from like 6 years ago explaining it, and it's the same today. Now, the new regions are going to bring 2 different kinds of rats. There's angels and Sancho rats in the new regions, as opposed to the Blood Raiders, which are in Delve. Most Goons are tired of them. And in addition to that, they newt, they're just a pain in the ass, and there's a glut of dark blood stuff on the market. Having 2 new types of rats will, I think, be a big thing for those who are ratting. And in addition, for those who are mining, and I asked GSOL, Goonswarm's logistics people, a specific question because I wanted to know. They told me that Delve has around 4,700 moons in the Goon-controlled systems. The new regions, on the other hand, have almost 10,000 That's almost more than double. More than double the moons, new rats, more systems, fewer people. I think anybody who cares about crabbing, this is going to be music to their ears. Now, it's not music to my ears because I hate fucking crabbing, but I know I'm not in the majority here on this. So I think from a purely monetary perspective, more space, more rats, more moons, more money. And I think that that's a pretty solid and compelling case to be made as to why to move. Now, as I said, I'm not a ratter. I'm not a miner. Fuck mining. What was music to my ears was the final argument that Asher made, and that is, we'll be living closer to the front lines where PanFam and Winterco are. And he pointed out that with tightened bridges from the edge of these new systems, and thanks to smuggler gates that cross these extra long swaths of territory, we can get from our new home territory to the heart of Horde space and Outer Passage in a dozen or so jumps. And even Gobbins acknowledged, and we'll get to that in a minute, that this move puts us considerably closer to them. And that, for me, is a good thing. That's the biggest good thing. And after all, as our big fans in the small gang community love to point out, this is a game about spaceship combat, among other things. Being close to the enemy means a greater likelihood of fights, and the FCs I've talked to are all salivating at being able to hit Horde faster and harder than we've been able to since they moved back to drones after the end of the war. So those are the core reasons Asher outlined in the State of the Union. Now, I don't think they're the whole answer, and they certainly don't answer the why now question. So let me talk about why now. Why didn't Goons do this a year ago, or why don't they put it off until, next year or something? Well, there's some solid reasons for that. And as you may have guessed, some of them have to do with the Equinox expansion. But it's not just Equinox. There happens to be a certain Halloween-inspired live event happening right now that makes a pretty good time for a big move like what we're seeing. And now let me explain. So obviously, the Equinox expansion, which had been panned by most of NullSec, came out in June. And we've been trying to deal with the fallout ever since. The new expansion introduced a number of new mechanics and made some significant changes to SOV. Overall, I think the final verdict amongst most NullSec players, and we've covered this ad nauseum on the Meta Show, is that Equinox overpromised and underdelivered on the goal of, quote, reinvigorating NullSec. What it did do was change SOV in such a way that you pretty much basically need more territory to do the same amount of things you were doing before. And that sucks for smaller groups, but for the big groups that have the ability to take the space, okay. I mean, right now, under Equinox, there's no way to make a system good for everything like you could under the old system. And the result is that invariably, most of the NullSec groups are going to have to expand their footprint. And I think Goons clearly made that decision. The nerf to Null made Delve less lucrative than it was before, and expansion was going to have to happen one way or the other. And even without the changes to skyhooks that were announced last week, and I think, to be fair, most groups really don't like, or at least have some kind of a complaint about those. The bottom line is most of these NullSec groups are going to need more space. Sucks for the small gangs, sucks for the smaller alliances, but it's reality. Now, in addition to the fact that the SOV changes require more space, there's another aspect of the Equinox expansion that has contributed to the move, and that was the temporary change that lasts until the end of this month that allows rigs on structures to be removed without being destroyed. So as you guys know, like ships, structures have rigs, and like ships, when you repackage a structure by unanchoring it, you normally destroy the rigs. That is super expensive, and CCP recognized that, and in order to ease the transition from the old SOV to the new Equinox SOV, they changed the rules and allowed temporarily the structure rigs to be removed. That's huge, especially for the extra large structures like Keepstars and Satoyos, where the rigs cost billions. This allowing the removal of the rigs is going to save Goons hundreds of billions of IS that otherwise would have been lost if they had to pull the structures down during the regular rules period. Now, this only lasts till the end of the month, so they got to start doing that now. They couldn't wait. So that's why now? Well, the rigs thing is only going to last for another month. Now, they could have done it earlier, but it takes a while to put this stuff together. And then there's the other thing. The other reason why now is the best time, and that is the Crimson Harvest live event. Now, if you're not familiar with the Crimson Harvest live event, this live event happens every year around Halloween. It's kind of cool. There's a bunch of stuff to get, new skins. They turn all the wrecks in space into little pumpkins. It's very cute. One of the highlights of Crimson Harvest is 90% loot drops. It is hard to put into words how valuable 90% loot drops are when you're talking about unanchoring structures. That's because it's so easy for enemies to scoop unanchoring structures, even with a defense fleet on grid. The normal nullsec meta for structures when an alliance abandons an area is to leave the structures up because they're going to get cleared out by the new residents, right? Even big structures like Keepstars and Satoyos are going to end up getting destroyed, often uncontested, because the chances of scooping the structure are so low, the best you can hope for is to kill the enemy freighter that manages to scoop it. Now you can do that still, and there's a 90% chance the loot fairy is going to say yes, and you can scoop the structure, but that's only lasts to the end of the month. So now, between the rig changes and Crimson Harvest, now is the absolute best time to be making these big changes, and I think that's pretty obvious why Goons chose October for this big move. And not the least of the fact is it's the end of the year. This is a time where people are playing. It's not summer anymore. You're going to see a lot of folks logging in. And then finally, and I noted this on the State of the Union stream and got yelled at by people in the audience. The best thing about these new regions, maybe not the best thing, but one of the best things, is there's no NPC nullsec smack dab in the middle of them. Now, I mean, granted, there are two regions close to the area. You got Curse and you got Stain that are both NPC. But unlike Delve, none of these systems have NPC nullsec right in the middle. And having NPC nullsec in easy jump range for Blops and Dreads for most of Delve was a constant thorn in the side of the Goon Swarm. And not having that now will make life a little easier for the various standing fleets like Beehive to be out there and protecting folks ratting and mining. Now, as an aside, and you will give me personal privilege, please, to talk about this, because this is an issue that I have been complaining about for years, and that is, I've argued long and loud, both on the CSM and on the Meta Show, and I'll do it right now, because why not? You know, we're hanging out. There should be no systems in nullsec that don't have at least a few systems that are NPC with NPC stations in them. Because no NPC stations makes it almost impossible for small groups to disrupt big ones effectively, and no NPC state space means there's no way for the big guys to go in and grab a foothold in territory to mess with the other big guys. We saw this in Delve during Vietnam. The first time that, I mean, we had massive drops in NPC Delve, the Fury at FWST, all of those, the 4 Keepstars that we killed all happened because of NPC Delve. So with no NPC space, there's nowhere to stage, there's nowhere to insure, there's nowhere to repair, there's nowhere to park your ship during a roam if you need to take a piss. The drone regions have 0 NPC nullsec, and that has always been a boon to Horde and their Pancrab group, and they can do things that folks in other areas of the game can't do, like run crab beacons with relative impunity. We could never do that in Delve. In fact, we had to base our fits for running crab beacons on things like Rorquals because they were the only thing you could save. They don't have that problem in Pancrab. They don't have that problem up in the drone regions. And it's bullshit. And I begged for years for CCP to fix this, and to date, they've done nothing. So as Goon Swarm has done countless times in the past from the Rorqual era on, we are going to demonstrate absurdity by being absurd. We're going to move our entire group, into an area with no NPC nullsec, just like PanFam has. I mean, if it's fair for them, why isn't it fair for us? Now, this likely means that CCP is going to fix this in a month, and if they do, I'm going to laugh, and then I'll cry, and then you guessed it, I'm going to take credit for it. But the bottom line is, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us. And I'm looking forward to living in an area with no and PC space, at least not that close. All right. I think that about covers the why and the why now questions. And if folks didn't listen to Asher explain this in 15 minutes, maybe they'll listen to me to do it in 20. I don't know. Maybe people would rather listen to me. I don't know. Maybe they like my voice more than Asher's. I doubt it, though. Even Mrs. Brisc likes Asher's voice better. But that's another conversation for another podcast. Now, I want to switch to another aspect of the Great Migration that I don't think has been covered anywhere else. And that is the catastrophic intelligence failure on the part of PanFam and FRT that kept this huge move, which was an undertaking of more than 5 months, completely secret until the announcement in the State of the Union. Now, I can't give enough credit to the Alliance leadership of Goons here, and I say that being part of it. We have seen constant leaks over the last year. If you look back from November of 2023 until today, we saw the Scopa leaks from last November of all the GitHub stuff. We saw Jay's flip. You had Contan's leaks. You had the absurd leaks from Jeremy through the Black Paw that included like dozens of Goon discords being completely copied, including private information and personal photos and pet photos and all kinds of stuff that had nothing to do with Eve. But all of that shit got leaked out onto Reddit, all put out on the street. But not one word of this massive news leaked before the State of the Union. That's nuts. That is crazy. And especially when you think about how many people had to know about it and all the obvious public steps that we took to make it happen. I mean, we did a deployment into UTAC-Q to support clearing out all the space. We thought we were going to get some fights. We didn't, because the bad guys ran instantly, which I don't think any of us expected. We had months of plans that had to be made, shared amongst all the Goon directors. There are more than 50 of us. If you guys saw the really cool Magic the Gathering card thing that Asher did put on Reddit the other day, you saw how many of us there were. But not a single one of them leaked anything. Nobody was disgruntled with Asher and leaked it. Nobody was pissed at somebody else and said, oh, I'm going to go tell about this story because it's a big deal and I can farm some karma on Reddit with it. And most importantly, nobody that didn't want to move. And I'm sure there are a lot of people, including me, who did not want to move, and I'll get into that later. Nobody leaked it to try to stop the move. Because if that had happened, I will tell you this right now, that would have been catastrophic. Okay? It is hard for me to put into words how devastating it would have been to the average Goon line member if they had heard about this move from anybody other than Asher. Gobbins gets up there and says this, or Noraus gets up there and says this, or Sandrin, or one of the Black Paw idiots, or any of the kind of things that happens. They missed a huge opportunity to really screw us by leaking this stuff early. And we know that they don't have a problem leaking things. I mean, if they're willing to leak personal pictures of people and their pets by dumping entire Discord servers worth of crap on Reddit, I guarantee you they would not have hesitated. And they would not have sat on something as big as Goons evacuating, which is what they would have said. Goons evacuating 1DQ. Goons evacuating Delve. Goons running away from Delve. Goons moving. It would have been a huge thing. They would have totally dumped that on us. But they didn't. So that, I have to say, is probably one of the most colossal intel failures in the history of this game. It was huge, it was obvious, and nobody saw it coming. Almost nobody. There were a couple of random people on Reddit that got really close, but nobody believed them when they said it. This was a colossal intel failure on their part, and I hope that they remember this, okay? Because honestly, I hope that they remember it, and maybe they should realize that guys like Sandrin and the rest of these Black Paw people and Jeremy and all the other dipshit spies that they try to put in Goons and then finagle their way. And I mean, Contan's trying to squeeze his way back in. It's hilarious watching him lick ass on Reddit. Maybe they should try to spend more time finding actual operational intel about what we're doing in the game instead of trying to find dirt and chat logs about players they don't like. I mean, this is exactly what happens when you lose sight of what we're all doing here, which is playing a game, and they're trying to make everything personal. Well, you done fucked up. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that about you. All right. Now I want to move on because I want to talk about PanFam's response, Godman's response to the State of the Union. Then I want to talk about FRTs because I think there's some pretty interesting comparisons that can be made between the two. All right. So Horde's response came first. This was about 5 or 6 hours after the State of the Union. And their response is, and I'm trying to be nice here, okay? It's about the same kind of ham-fisted bullshit you would expect from a really low-budget political campaign or North Korea. Or even worse, something Fountain Frank would say, okay? I feel like the old Garbarino's phoning it in on this one, and I think you'll agree with me. So let me read you what he said. He sends this ping out Saturday evening. It's like 5 hours after the State of the Union, which I think, frankly, is more than enough time for him to have figured out something, smart to say. But he didn't. This is what he said. All right, I digress. Let me read it. All right. He starts off, "Congrats, everyone. At long last, we have removed goons from Delve. Honk." Okay. This is the most obvious joke they could have possibly led with, and it's not funny. It's not funny. It's not fun. It's, to use the words that I absolutely hate, but my kid would say, it is total cringe. But it just gets worse. He goes on. He says, "Goons have announced that they will permanently move out of Delve and go live in Tenerifis, UALX. Brave will be taking most of Delve." Then he says, "Good work to all the SIGs that have been burning the jabronis' back line in the last months and continuing to create a heavy price for overextending. For months, goons told their members that they would eventually return to Delve, but eventually had to give up on that idea," said eventually twice, "probably because they realized that would cost them all their new territory." Okay. All their new territory. Okay. Yes. He actually said this, okay? He is claiming that it was Horde SIGs killing random structures that we had marked do not use because we're taking them down anyway, that convinced goon leadership we couldn't hold all of this new space and Delve, so we have to give up Delve? I don't know what planet that makes sense on, but that's what he said, okay? Horde SIGs killing Athenors made goons give up Delve for new space. You can't make this shit up, all right? Here's the part that I like the most. This is where he gets cute with the crocodile tears. As a quick take, it was quick. "Brave is already unable to handle basic roaming fleets in Quirius as of now, so them overextending into Delve with the NPC stations right in the middle is like going to get them farmed, likely going to get them farmed pretty hard. I hope I'm wrong, but I think this might be the beginning of the end for them, as the pressure will lead to more and more of Brave's people getting poached by goons, and then those get poached by Init. A reverse human centipede of space guilds that has Brave occupying the least enviable position." Okay, I'm going to try to ignore that absolutely disgusting mental image. And I mean, what the fuck, Gobbins? All right, but let's focus on the Brave stuff for a second, okay? First, let me congratulate Brave, our dear friends in Barv, on being the only legacy group to make it successfully into 1DQ. Congrats. 1DQ by Christmas of 2024. Second, and I'm not trying to blow smoke up Brave's ass here, but let me be clear. They have weathered far worse than NPC Delve, okay? They've had PL dropping on them from fucking everywhere for years. They have been farmed constantly. They have been punching bags for every big alliance from us to PL to Test and back. Okay? I don't think having 12 systems in NPC Delve is going to cause some kind of failure cascade in Brave. Okay? It's not going to happen. Now watch it happen because I said it's not going to happen. Listen, I don't think it's going to happen. I trust Jinx, trust his crew. I think they're going to be fine. Now, all right, that's not it. I'm not done. That's not all of it, okay? It gets better. Now listen to this. And remember everything I said earlier about the new space and why it's better, okay, monetarily. So Gobbin says this. He says, for goons, the economy in Tenerifis is likely to be a downgrade. For starters, because Angel Rats have lower loot and worse escalations than Blood Raiders, but also because a lot of larger builders will simply look at the effort required to relocate and pass. Their new staging does, however, allow them to be more aggressive, so expect more pushes by the hostiles in future. What? Okay. Now, I mean, the hostiles in future thing, we'll talk about that. That's fine. But listen, I've already pointed out the difference in the size, the different rats and everything. We already talked about that. But I want to point out, Gomez is talking about Tenerifis only. And that makes me think that even 5 hours after the State of the Union, he still has no idea what the fuck is happening. He still has no idea that we aren't just going to live in Tenerifis, but we're going to be taking Impasse and Imencia and the regions, the area in Catch we already have. There's more than Angel Rats there. There's more space. There's more moons. There's a ton of different things. I don't see how he can make the argument that this is monetarily a worse thing for us unless he doesn't know what we're actually doing. I wonder. Because frankly, if anything, the main argument that Asher led with was this is going to be better for us monetarily. I don't think he would have said that if it wasn't true. And I certainly don't think Gobbins has any fucking idea. I do appreciate the fact that he acknowledged that goons moving closer are going to likely mean more combat because that's what I want to see. Now, there's more to the ping, not much more, like another 2 or 3 sentences. And he talks about, what that doesn't mean much for them, and they'll be in a good position to hit Delve, and they've got dreads in a system near the new staging, blah, 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 blah. But look, listen, this is, as I said, this is Gobbins phoning it in, okay? This was not good analysis. It wasn't really good spin even. It was just, bad. I mean, all right, I give him credit. He did say jabronis, so you can mark that off on your bingo card, and I like it when he says jabronis, but that's it. Other than that, this was a really kind of piss poor attempt at spin, and I think it really looks bad when you compare with what Noraus said. So here's what Noraus told FRT, and I appreciate the Black Hand for getting me a good Chinese translation of this in a timely fashion so I could share it with you guys tonight. So Noraus says, Goon Swarm held an alliance meeting today at 3 a.m. domestic time, obviously China time, officially announcing their decision to relocate from Delve, moving to UALX. If that name sounds familiar, it's the same location as the super capital battle that took place 6 years ago. And I'm going to talk about that at the end of the show. All right. And Goon Swarm's vaunted ally, XIX, is settling in O3 Tech 4MN, another nostalgic star system. That's a Winterco thing. They fought a long time in that system with Test and Legacy back in the day. So that's why he mentions O3 Tech. Naturally, many people are asking who's taking over Delve, he says. Brave will be moving into E3OI, just 2 jumps from 1DQ, with a 6 light-year radius covering the core of Delve, except for a couple of remote southern systems. Meanwhile, Dracaris, the Initiative's ally, is moving their major assets back to Quirius, specifically P-Tech-Z. Actually, he says DC. I don't know if that's Dracaris or some other group, because I don't know why he would say Initiative's ally, but I don't know. Anyway. As for Init, they remain where they are. Now, you see what he did here, okay? First of all, no lame jokes, although they probably wouldn't have translated if there were any very well. There's no bullshit attempts to claim credit. He's got a better understanding of what's actually happening because he tells what happens, where Brave is going to be, and gives specific systems and all that kind of stuff. And he was willing to tell his members that, which Gobbins didn't. I give him credit. This is a no-nonsense, just the facts explanation, and that's pretty solid. And it's in complete contrast to what Gobbins did. All right. So what does this mean for EVE Online? Well, I think it means a few things. I think, first of all, obviously, you're going to see a spike in subs, and the PCU is going to go up, and the October MER is going to be funky because you're going to see the biggest wealth transfer out of Delve into the other regions that you're ever going to see. It's going to be crazy. I'm looking forward to seeing that MER and have Angry tell me what it means. Because a lot of goons are going to have to come back and move their shit. They're going to have to resub. A lot of people are going to resub, especially Titan accounts and other things that are expensive. That means they're going to be coming back. They're going to show up on the PCU. They're going to show up as a spike in subs. And I mean, that can't be bad because more subs means more folks in space. And I mean, this is goons we're talking about here. So they're going to be some pretty juicy kill mails. That's inevitable. All right. And I think the small gangers, as much as it pains me to say, are going to have a good time because they're going to have more targets in space. And although they're not probably going to get the combat responses that they want, and I'm sure they'll bitch about that, they're going to get more targets to shoot at, especially as, you know, line members are moving, Terras and Badgers and all the other small, you know, blockade runners and transports around trying to move shit back and forth between the various systems that they lived in and 1DQ so that they'll be able to move that stuff out to UALX in the big move ops. And then, I mean, obviously PanFam and FRT are going to have chances to hit these move ops, and I'll be surprised if they don't take them, especially seeing as how, you know, groups like NC Dot have a long history of doing that to us, and they've been pretty good at it. If we don't lose a dozen Titans and a bunch more supers and freighters worth of stuff, I will be very surprised. So we're going to be taking space closer to the front lines, and I think in the end that's another thing that bodes well for future war possibilities, being that close. You know what they said? Hunt for Red October, having your ships and our ships in such close proximity is inherently dangerous. Wars have begun that way, Mr. Ambassador. Anyway, I think that's likely that maybe we'll get a war out of this. That would be nice. Now, the big loser, as I noted earlier, well, it's going to be the small alliances that were living down there under the Southeast Agreement. Obviously, we didn't re-up the Southeast Agreement. That ran out in January of this year, and a lot of people wonder, why aren't you doing that? Well, you kind of know now because we saw it coming. Since goons are not giving up Delve, we're not I mean, that I want to be clear about. Goons are not giving up Delve. It's not going to be abandoned. Small groups are not going to be able to come and take the space. They'll have to fight Brave and whoever else is living there for it. 1DQ is not going anywhere. So for the folks that want to move, that know they're not going to be around in it for a couple months, they don't have to worry about it. 1DQ is not going anywhere. The First Innominate Palace is not going anywhere. It's going to stay up for a while, and permanently, as far as I'm concerned. And they don't have to worry about that. But what this does mean is we're going to control Delve plus all this extra space, and that's just less territory for the non-blocks. Now, some people are going to think that this is a bigger problem than others. And at the same time, I think, you know, the folks complaining about power projection should like this, right? We're moving closer. They told us all the time, why don't you guys just move? Well, we're doing it. And by moving, we're going to live closer to the bad guys, and we're not going to have to rely on Ansiblexes to get us from 1DQ halfway across the galaxy. Now we can use the old-fashioned way with Titan bridges and smuggler gates and the same wormholes we've used before to get there. And we're that much closer. So, and hopefully that means there'll be fewer systems that are empty between us and the bad guys. Maybe the small gang guys will be happy and they'll stop whining for 5 minutes. A boy can dream. Now, I will say, for 9 years, Delve and goons have been synonymous. And this this move is the end of an era. And I want to be clear. When the idea came down from on high that we were considering this, I was totally against it. I thought this was going to be absolutely horrible for line members. I thought they were going to hate it. I thought they were going to flip out. I thought they were going to quit. I thought we'd be leaving a ton of folks behind, especially folks who couldn't be online to move. Because I figured it was going to take, we were going to try to do it very quickly like we had in the past. It wasn't clear to me at the time that this was going to be a long-term process, which I think it is. And I didn't think the space was as good as Delve. Like it's Fortress Delve, you know. This had been drilled into our heads for years, but I also had not been paying close attention to the equinox changes. And frankly, I was willing to say, all right, you know what? We can eat the systems in Delve not being as good as somewhere else because, hey, you know, the fact that we've lived here and we've got the connections here and we know this place, that's obviously going to make the difference. And in the end, I mean, don't we have enough stuff? Haven't we made enough money? Do we really need to make more money? And I was very concerned about the impact on the average line member and how they take it. And to throw in the sob story, because it's been on my mind lately, you know, we got a lot of emotional baggage here in Delve, okay? And not just from the last war, but from the things we've done and the places we've been to with all the folks that we have lost over the years. And I know that for me, Delve is a part of my life. It's been a part of my life for a long time, even when I wasn't in it, you know. And the amount of time that I've spent here with Nom Nom and Piercing and Itchy and many, many other goons we've lost over the years, it feels like we're leaving them behind, you know, and that sucks. But I know, and I think that if they were here with us, they would tell us and say, this is the right thing to do. And it makes a lot of sense. And as the months went on and we kept the planning going and Asher kept talking about everything, I realized it was true. You know, we've been here too long. Sometimes you need a change of scenery, you know, a new place to hang your hat, some new drapes in the kitchen, shake off the lethargy. And that and being closer to the bad guys is what convinced me that this is the right thing to do. And I think it is. And I'm looking forward to the move now, where I would have said 5 months ago when they first came up, I thought it was the craziest thing I'd ever heard. And I absolutely hated it. And now I'm ready to go. All my stuff's packed. Let's move. So I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be sad leaving Delve. I'm going to be sad saying so long, but I know it's not goodbye. We're still going to be there. We're still going to be there for a long time. It's going to take a while to move everybody. And so I think me and the rest of the folks out there who have grown up or at least spent way too much time in this tiny portion of New Eden that we've called home will have plenty of time to come to grips with the change. I also want to say I appreciate where we're moving. All right. I know Tenerifis may not seem like it's the front lines and it's not as famous as 1DQ and everything, but I have to say UALX, this is a great system. This is a pretty storied system in EVE Online. And I want to throw back and do a little story time with Uncle Brisky to end the show. For those of you who don't remember, this was 6 years ago, July of 2018, one of the really first really big Keepstar Titan battles in EVE happened in UALX. Now, we're at the end of the show. It's been 40 some plus minutes of me bloviating at you people. So permit me a brief stroll down memory lane here. So back in July of 2018, Imperium Legacy were on the same side. This was the Imperial Legacy era. I think it might have been the start of the Imperial Legacy era, if I recall correctly. And Legacy had been fighting PanFam as they are wont to do, and had been doing this for a while, and they were in the middle of some other random war. And I can't remember what started it. I doubt they remember what started it, but I do remember that Test dropped a Keepstar in UALX, and PanFam came to contest it, and they brought their Titan fleet. At that point, this was 2018. I think Citadel launched at the end of 2016 during the Casino War. Actually, middle of Casino War, so it would have been like April or May. But I don't think anybody had a Keepstar up for a while. I know the first Keepstar in the game was dropped by Hard Knocks and Rage. But at that point, I think only something like 17 Keepstars had died in New Eden, which is nothing. I mean, tiny compared to the number. I mean, we've lost hundreds by now. And so the Keepstar timer with a Titan battle attached to it meta that we know today was brand new. It was in its infancy. So Legacy, who was allied with us with the Imperium at the time, they had dropped a keep in UALX, and it sparked one of the first major Titan fights in a while. And the result of that fight, and it was a long fight, I remember watching it on Twitch. I remember going on to INN and talking with Big Red Boat, who was watching it. And I don't recall Goons having a lot of capitals there. I think we were fighting PanFam over in X47 area. And so we had sent subcap fleets over to UALX. But the result was PanFam lost 10 Titans. Legacy only lost 4, but Legacy lost like 370 dreads because they were using the dreads as bait, as basically as a tank for the Titans. So they wouldn't shoot the Titans, they'd shoot the dreads first. And then they killed the Keepstar at the same time. And in the end, the fight ended up having something like 2.5 trillion ISK loss between both sides. But it didn't end there. Because as often happens, right at the end of the Keepstar fight, the node died. Okay? And the node died like 2 hours, either 2 hours or an hour before downtime. Okay? So then the question was, all right, who's going to log back in first? And PanFam had long history of winning the fight when the server goes down by being able to log back in first. But, and everybody's seen this happen, when you log out and you don't log in after downtime, the result is whoever gets in first, and if it's the other guy, they got a chance to bubble trap the fleet that didn't log in. And that's what happened. So PanFam's Titan fleet was stuck in a massive bubbles after the fight when the Keepstar died, and they decided not to log back in, and they given the downtime was just like an hour away, and the result was the entire fleet was trapped. Now, it gets better, okay? There was all kinds of drama, because there was accusations made, because one of the FCs of the NC fleet, and I don't have to say who it is because you guys all probably know, was on the CSM at the time. And he told the fleet that CCP told him the node was not going to be up before downtime. So they decided not to log back in. The result was they didn't log back in, and there was a 7-day hell camp. Tess goes and drops another Keepstar 1,000 kilometers off of where the PL fleet was logged out. And then there's all kinds of drama. I mean, it was crazy. And there were claims that CC, like the CSM member had told his fleet that CCP told him that the thing was going to go down. So Falcon ends up going to Reddit to clarify that this was bullshit. Nobody told anybody that the node was going to be down. The node was in fact up for an hour when the PanFam guys decided not to log back in, and that the CSM would never get this kind of information. Then there were other accusations that CCP GMs were moving NC and PL ships out of the system. And that was true. And they admitted it. They admitted at least one Erebus was moved and another Revelation was moved. And they forced their Erebus to go back. They moved the Erebus back, but they couldn't move the Rev back because the Rev was put back into a corporation hangar, apparently. And then somebody else picked it out of the corporation hangar. And it wouldn't have been fair to put that person back when they weren't there in the first place. But this all happens on Reddit. And CCP Falcon, who was with the community team at the time, had to come out and say all this stuff and make it clear, like, CCP's not putting their finger on the fight and everything. And it was just crazy drama. So there's that drama. There's all kinds of propaganda coming up because this was happening over like a week time period. So there was a 7-day hell camp. Oh, I forgot. There was the copy pasta. You guys may not remember this copy pasta, but I do. There was a copy pasta of, this is disgusting. They log in, they have activate, hack, and jump to their fort and everything. That was on Reddit constantly back in 2018. And you still see it sometimes, I think, but it's one of those ones where, like, you know, if you know, you know. And I appreciate that's where this came from. I think, if I recall correctly, that's where this came from. So anyway, the result is the hell camp is set up. And it lasts about 7 days. And by the end of that week, it was pretty clear that Legacy was having a hard time keeping it up. In the beginning, you had subcap fleets from Black Legion, Elo Knight, you had NC Dot, you had PL, small cap fleets coming, not cap fleets, but small subcap fleets coming in. And they were clearing off the bubbles. They were in Ishtars and they were just shooting the bubbles. And Legacy was able to drop, and we were there as well helping. We're able to drop bubbles to keep the bubble camp going. But by the end of the week, it was pretty clear that, you know, Legacy wasn't going to be able to keep up. And then what I can only describe as the EVE Online equivalent of Dunkirk, Elo and Doom Chinchilla PL managed to clear enough of the bubbles that PanFam had a chance and took it to log all the supers and titans in. And they managed to do that, and they got them all out without a loss. And it was a huge deal. Absolutely huge. Tremendous fight. Tons of propaganda. There's an amazing YouTube video of like sphere.exe that somebody made about them getting out. And it's really, really funny. Hopefully I can find that. I should link it in the chat on YouTube when we get this up on the site. But if you Google sphere.exe, I think you should be able to find the video on YouTube, and it's pretty solid. So that happened. That all happened in UALX, and that's what I remember of the system. And it's not 1DQ, but that's still a pretty solid pedigree for our new home system. So I'm looking forward to being there and telling all these stories to our new friends who've never lived there before. All right. With that, I'm going to call it for this podcast edition of the Meta Show. I hope you've all enjoyed having me back, at least for a little while. Dave and Betty should be back this weekend. They're going to have a discussion, obviously, of the Great Migration and how it's going, as well as they're going to have commentary on the CSM 19 election, which is fully underway. I believe they're also going to have a number of candidates who are running for CSM 19. I am not one of them. We'll be on the show next week, so you'll get to hear from some of the candidates who are running, not just the ones that are running on the Imperium ballot, but potentially anybody. So I'd like to say, on behalf of all of us here at INN and the Meta Show, I want to thank you for listening. And as always, you stay classy, New Eden.